It's not the house that's haunted. It's your son.
What's your favorite scary movie?
What's the boogeyman?
As a matter of fact, it was.
What is going on? My spooky family, Slashes and Sync, is back with another episode, and today we're going to be talking about Terrifier 3. Probably one of the most anticipated sequels to a film in a long time, I would say.
Yep, the third film in a current trilogy. It seems to be turning into a franchise with David Leone's hint at Terrifier 4 being confirmed.
Yeah.
So I'm expecting like a 5 or 6 movie.
There's rumors of a fifth one already, but nothing's been confirmed yet. The fourth one is already, I think, under works, like on the script and everything.
I believe so. I mean, considering the amount of revenue that they made, I wouldn't doubt the fact that there would be a fifth or a sixth one. I just hope that they keep to the script, which they have for like the last 3 films. It's been keeping with the same tone of and energy altogether, which is really hard.
They haven't switched it up yet, and they stay true to what the original Terrifier was.
Yeah, so. I think the only film that we haven't watched is All Hallows Eve. Which is where like art is technically quote unquote born, but we've seen 1, 2, and 3, 1 and 2 a lot.
Plus, I think, and correct me in the comments if I'm wrong, I do think Terrifier, the film itself, kind of retcons All Hallows Eve, but I could be entirely wrong on that. Just, like, let me know, because I think the origins are a little bit different, which I can see why, because it's like Terrifier was a fan-funded film. We didn't even know that was going to be made. I don't even think David Leone knew if that film was going to be made.
Yeah,
so it's
like fully finished and things along those lines.
I'm sure he had ideas, but now that we're, 3 pretty much in, we're 3 deep in. Like we're getting more lore on him, and he's getting able to exercise more of his creative thoughts on arts. And I
know some people even argue that like Art the Clown didn't necessarily start from All Hallows Eve. There was like a YouTube short, and then it transitioned to All Hallows Eve, and then from All Hallows Eve it jumped over to Terrifier 1, but we haven't seen the, I guess, first 2 pieces or first piece, depending on which side of the argument you stand. So, but all in all, I would say with the movies labeled Terrifier, like I was saying earlier, it keeps the same tone and keeps the same vibe altogether.
So before I break down the synopsis of this film, and we're going to take it very casual today, we just got done doing step-by-step, play-by-play of the Halloween franchise. So we're going to take it, very laid back. And once this is out on digital and we rewatch 1, 2, and 3, we'll probably break down each film plot by plot and go more in depth with the story. This is just like, we just got done watching this last night. So this is very much just fresh in our brains.
I was away for Japan. That's why this didn't come out sooner. Plus, we already had promised we would do the Halloween franchise for the month of October. And since October has 5 Tuesdays, MJ and I were kind of like debating on whether or not we should cover this or another topic. But Terrifier 3 has been a hot topic for
making
3
lots
weeks.
of money. I think they are now, as of this podcast, the highest rated or highest grossing unrated film of all time.
Yeah. I think you said that right before we left the house earlier today.
That's insane, bro.
With like a income of like 50 million, right?
50 plus million. It's probably going to make more too.
Definitely, especially with the hype. I know a lot of people have already seen it on multiple occasions. I wouldn't mind going back seeing it again.
It got a little boost too after what happened with Joker.
Yes,
too.
Definitely.
People were, I guess, I didn't really see the point of comparing them, but I guess at the end of the day, it is 2 clowns. And then on top of that, one is like a very huge, high budgeted cinematic film versus a movie that comes from basically barely having any budget.
Very humble beginnings.
Yeah, so it's
very humble beginnings.
I guess in that way it makes sense to compare them, but it was kind of funny that people who've probably never even seen a Terrifier film were saying, like, putting images side by side, one is outgrossing the other. Like, it's kind of crazy that it got that little boost from that, you know?
Yeah, the amount of memes that you and I saw on social media in regards to just that was fucking hilarious.
Speaking of which, what is the actor's name for R? David Howard Thornton. Yeah. He actually did a fan film or a short film years ago where he portrayed the Joker. And he talked about how he wouldn't mind doing it again. So that's So if Art is able to like elevate David's career, into becoming the Joker, that'd be kind of badass.
Definitely.
So,
you could get recruited by one of the bigger, I guess, companies, if you will.
James Gunn's DC probably.
Yeah.
I don't think we're gonna get it any more to do with the current Joker iteration.
Yeah. People were really mad with the Joker film and how it ended and all the above. I think you and I like fully on agreed that we wouldn't even go watch it in theaters until it came out on streaming services, not even on digital.
Yeah.
So.
But skipping over to Terrifier 3, I'll break down the synopsis real quick. And once we do that, we're going to give our likes and dislikes. And just kind of ask each other questions about the film. And these questions are also very much aimed at you guys as well. So go ahead and comment down below, both on Spotify and on YouTube, what y'all think about Terrifier 3 and just the stuff that we talk about in this podcast.
Mm-hmm.
So after surviving Art the Clown's Halloween massacre, Sienna and her brother struggle to rebuild their shattered lives. As the holiday season approaches, they try to embrace the Christmas spirit and leave the horrors of the past behind. However, just when they think they're safe, Art returns, determined to turn their holiday cheer into a new nightmare.
Mm-hmm.
So, I think the first thing you and I were expecting walking into this is the opening scene.
Yes.
And it's because we saw plenty of times on Twitter.
A lot of
I think it was also on the news too.
Yeah.
I
saw it on Instagram. I saw it on X.
People were walking out of the theater, not because the film was bad, just because of how gory it was and it was too much for them.
Yeah. And
I think you and I also both came across posts that mentioned that Terrifier 3, I almost said Halloween 3, Terrifier 3 had scenes that were like 90% of the kills were on the level of the bedroom scene.
Yeah, if not higher.
Yeah, we saw that from a lot of people. I think even so much that Sydney from Horror Chronicles even mentioned that in her TikTok review of just like she was expecting these kills just to be insane. And I don't remember if she agreed with that take or not. I don't personally agree with that take, but that was all over Twitter and everything. But I'll get into your thoughts. What was your mindset going into this film last night?
I had heard that a lot of people could not stomach the first 7 minutes of the movie. And if you could get past the first 7 minutes of the movie, then you could definitely get through the rest of the film.
It was specifically the opening, right?
Yeah, a lot of people said it was really intense, a lot of blood, a lot of gore. Like, Art was on another fucking level. Not only that, but I had heard that when people, if they made it through the film, and this is like a lot of other social media personalities who essentially watched the film and do have a stomach like ours, when they went and watched Terrifier 3, they had to come home and immediately put on a Disney move to cleanse, so to speak. Yeah. So, like, you and I feel like our expectation for the film grew a lot higher and, like, built up over the weeks. Plus, with me being in Japan for the last 2 weeks and neither one of us being able to put the time to watch Terrifier 3 until yesterday, it built up the anticipation more, and we got to see more and more people's reactions. A lot of our mutuals, a lot of smaller content creators, and things along those lines.
Film critics, and even like the people who, like from TikTok, like Sydney, who were invited to watch it. Like, we saw a lot of people's just takes on Terrifier 3, and our hype grew. Yes, and sadly, I don't know about you, but it probably, for me, grew to a level that might have been too big. I think so too, because going back to the question that you asked earlier and like really narrowing down why I brought all this up is because of the fact I feel like the amount of hype had me ready for scenes very similar to the bedroom scene. And like the bedroom scene to this day in Terrifier 2 puts me on the edge of my seat. Like I always catch myself tensed up, clenching my jaw, or just kind of like squinting a bit, not because I can't take it, but more so because of the fact of like how tormenting it is. Yeah. I do get why people brought up that scene as a reference, because I'm not gonna lie, Art gets more and more fucking creative as time passes with each kill, and it seems like the more kill he has under his belt, like the more inventive ways he figures out ways to torment people and then finally kill them if he wants to, of course. But there were also a lot of kills off screen. And I was really surprised by that, because that wasn't something that I had seen in any of the previous Terrifier films. Even if they were really quick kills,
you would still see the aftermath at the very least. Like,
I'm trying to think about it. I think, like, even in the first Terrifier, I think he kills the homeless woman off screen, but no,
she's not fully dead.
She actually walks in the frame, and you see her.
She's scalped, and her chest is like completely torn off. But we can assume she's dead because that kind of trauma and that amount of blood loss is going to lead to somebody dying. But with the opening scene, you had the older brother Timmy, get chopped up off screen. You could hear it. You would hear like the sweltering, the flesh falling apart, and things along those lines. Whenever Art finally made it to the master bedroom, you were first hearing the kills and seeing the blood splatters before you saw the actual like kill itself.
They shot it in an interesting way where when they're sleeping, the husband and the wife's like the lump of her laying down like with the comforter like covered the husband getting hit. So you're seeing Art swing the axe, but you're not seeing like the blood really splatter anywhere until she wakes up and you see the blood over the bed and everything.
And her arms, and like the comforter is finally soaking it through.
It was shot in an interesting way, and that's what I like about the Terrifier films. They're shot in a very unique way, and I think that separates them a little bit from other horror films.
Definitely. It's very innovative. It doesn't necessarily follow a trend. It can on certain occasions, but not 100%. However, like I felt like it was not necessarily out of character, but something that nobody really warned me of, which is it wasn't just going to be Timmy in the beginning of the film. I mean, I'm going to fast forward a bit, but even Jonathan's kill was off screen.
Yeah, and
he's a key character.
Yeah, that's kind of interesting, yeah.
And same with the uncle. The uncle's kill was off screen. We saw the aunt's kill on screen, and hers was insane. But it seems like a lot of important characters or characters that you wouldn't be able to easily stomach being killed were purposely off screen. And I don't think it was because a lot of things were happening in the film. I think it was just more so to speed up the timeline.
Do you feel like that was you think it was because of the timeline? You don't think it was like a creative choice like in Iron Claw where they excluded the death of another brother because they thought the crowd or the audience wouldn't be able to handle it?
It could be a mix of both, but at the same time, if we're comparing it to the bedroom scene, the first time you and I watched it, like the first time I saw the scene unfold, in the back of my mind, I was thinking, does it really need to be this long? But at the same time, as I was watching it, I was like, I think it might need to be this long for me to understand just how like fucking savage this man is, or this entity is.
Because I think, and I'm low-key kind of happy that that there wasn't really a kill in this. I know we kind of went off topic already, but that this kill wasn't surpassed in Terrifier 3, at least in our personal opinions.
Yeah.
Because there's something unique about that scene. It's like, I think people who probably compared it haven't seen it in a while and just kind of associated it with it just being gory. And that's probably where the intention of comparing them comes from.
Yeah.
But it's like what you said, the scene is dragged on. And it's not even dragged on in the sense of like another certain kill that is dragged on in Terrifier 3. Art leaves the entire scene for like at least a minute, and then comes back, like bursts right through the door, pure enjoyment of what he has found, and then continues killing the character.
Yeah.
Like that's like rarely shown in a horror movie. I think maybe Rob Zombie's done it a couple of times, like in his whole House of a Thousand Corpses Devil Rejects, but not like that though.
Yeah.
You know? Like maybe it's like, oh, they go on a little montage speech about how they're the devil's, hitmen or something, and then, then they'll continue it. Yeah. It's not like where the character leaves the entire scene.
Lets the victim think that it's done and over with, and then comes back.
Yeah. Like there's something special about that. And we don't really get that in Terrifier 3, and I kind of want 2 to kind of just stay as like its own thing. I don't want it to be like redone or just
Yeah, which I mean, who knows? Maybe it was a creative decision. Maybe Dave Leone had to cut certain things out. Like as the franchise has gotten bigger, he may need to water things down a little bit more. Not that I think the movie was watered down, but more so in the sense of like there could have still been a lot that was shown with these very intimate kills, if you will. But at the same time, like, I thoroughly enjoyed the movie. I don't feel like it really took away from the experience. I think in my head, I had thought that most kills would be as tormenting, as gruesome as, like, the bedroom scene. Not necessarily every kill needs to take 20 minutes of screen time. No, just more so in the sense of, like, you could clearly tell the victim in the bedroom scene is going through hell and back. Like, some of the kills that happened in 3, they took a while. Like the Santa Claus one, that one took a while for sure. But there's a difference between being slowly skinned and scalped and like seeing salt literally being poured on the wounds and rubbed in, and then gasoline being spread all over you, and like your brain matter's poking out, like shit along those lines. Yeah. And he's like bitten through your shins, and it was bits and pieces of what happened in the bedroom scene sprinkled out throughout the kills of the movie.
So going off of this, and I'll go ahead and answer first before I let you talk. The question that I have for everyone watching this and listening, and for you, is, do you feel like the movie wasn't as gory as you expected it to be? And I'll say my part, I don't think it was, but I'm a little bit different. So funny enough, in the midst of before Marva going to Japan, we decided to watch the Hatchet films, because that's a franchise that I know Dead Meat's covered before on the Kill Count, and I've seen people talk about Victor Crowley before. Yes. So we wanted to check it out, and we got hooked, and we ended up watching almost all of them. We didn't finish 3, but I did when Marva was gone in Japan. Those films are really gory. They are. And the practical effects are just awesome. Mm-hmm. I feel like I have kind of low-key built up a tolerance of seeing the kills in that movie. Mm-hmm. And I don't want to sit here and compare, the kills in Hatchet to the kills in Terrifier, but at least with Terrifier 3, when I went into it, I did expect a lot more of like the cheese grater. I expected more of like the scalping, but even worse because we already got scalping in Terrifier 2. Yeah. Like I expected a lot more on top of what we'd already gotten, but like you said, it was kind of sprinkled throughout. Yeah, not just put it all in one scene. Yeah, so I kind of feel like the gore in this film wasn't specifically something that kind of blew my expectations away. It was very much a gory horror film, but not the goriest horror film of all time.
I feel like there was a good amount of gore. Considering the amount of bodies that Art catched in this movie.
Huge body count.
I can see why, again, going back to my previous answer, why they didn't indulge in every single kill. Because then we would have been sitting there for 5 hours. Like, let's be fucking real. Yeah. I do feel like the gore was there. And that's what I meant by timeline, that since there were so many kills, they could only really embellish and invest into certain kills. But my biggest gripe is that they didn't embellish in Jonathan's kill.
He should have been shown, regardless of what you think. Like, yeah. Unless they're going to pull something over us and that he's actually still alive, then sure, retroactively, that'll get fixed in a later film. Yeah. But as of right now, as just Terrifier 3 by itself, they should have showed it. Yeah. But again, we don't know. Creative decision, there might be something in the future that is going to be left to be fully answered, hopefully not too long from now. Yeah. But as far as gore goes, I would actually have to disagree. I feel like it was a good amount considering the amount of bodies that he caught. And it wasn't just him. It was also his partner, Victoria. Yeah. Not necessarily like partner, but it seems to be his counterpart. Like the... Good old Vicky.
Seeing the guard, or I guess the lead singer of Fozzy, walk into the...
Chris Jericho.
Yeah. Seeing him walk into Victoria's room while Art's head is gorging out on the nurse's face, and Victoria is eating on whatever cord that is attached to Art's head. She's not eating the nurse's body. I was paying really, really fucking close attention to that scene. That like made my stomach churn. I'm not gonna lie. The amount of use of intestines in this movie was insane. The amount of bodies being cut in half was also pretty high. I also noticed that Art was decapitating a lot of people, which could also be a way of him like letting go of his frustrations of him being decapitated by Sienna altogether. Yeah. So there was a lot of symbolism in there. And he was skinning a lot of people too. Let's be fucking real.
I noticed that the beheading was almost like his MO in this movie versus the first one where he was like tearing people's faces.
Tearing people's apart.
Like disfiguring them.
And like in the second one, he seemed to just torment them while he was killing them. Yeah. Like the whip with Sienna and all the sharp tools on it. Like, or even in the first movie, I'm sorry, I think I might have crossed the two, but like.
No, he does hit Sienna with like that hammer with
all the nails
bull,
on
yeah,
it.
the ball head with
with all the
nails,
different like nails and
very
sharp
medieval.
objects. Yeah, he's very inventive in his stuff. But there were a lot of moments where my stomach would drop, and I would see a lot of blood, and I would see a lot of guts. Like, and again, like guts don't necessarily like freak me out. It's more so what people do with it afterwards.
There's a lot of guts in this movie, bro.
Yeah,
especially in that one scene where Homeboy's dick kind of blended in with the intestines because it was all so red. Like that was kind of hilarious. I'm not gonna hold you, but
it was pretty interesting because in the back of my mind, whenever that scene was playing out, I was like, are they gonna do a reenactment of the Saw scene, but with a guy? And that essentially was the case. The only difference is that this man didn't get sawed all the way through. Art kind of stopped halfway through to his chest.
With a chainsaw too.
And it was with a chainsaw, not with a handsaw, which is like
even kind of crazier that he did it with a hacksaw like that. So,
we both know, or at least we all know, that Art could have easily sawed through him. He just decided not to. There was a good amount of gore. There was a good amount of blood. It was really... I think it hit the mark as far as that goes, considering the amount of bodies that Art was catching in this film.
Well, I guess agree to disagree, but I do see your points, and I do understand it, especially with a lot of the beheadings and the intestines. I kind of get your point on that now.
Yeah.
But moving over from Art, we'll go back to David Howard Thorne's portrayal of Art the Clown in a little bit. But let's discuss Sienna Shaw, also portrayed by Lauren Lavera.
Yeah.
So I think she was phenomenal in this movie. I think she's come into her own, and this legitimately, she may have just come in to the franchise by the second movie, but I think when all is said and done, if there is 5 or 6 films, this is going to be her franchise, man. Like right there with Art. Like she's made a name for herself, and her acting was a lot better in this movie.
Yeah.
I think she had a lot more confidence as the Sienna character.
Yeah.
Just overall, nothing but praise for her. What do you think?
Lauren did a very good job. I originally was confused about my take on Sienna, the character, whenever we watched Terrifier 2 the first time.
Right.
Watching it a second time, I appreciated her more. And then recently watching it a third time, I was just like, okay, no, like she's definitely like the counterpart to Art the Clown, because most iconic horror movies, especially ones that we constantly turn to and refer to, which is the ones that are in the 80s, 90s and 70s, they all have a counterpart, and they're usually female protagonists that are the counterpart to the male antagonist, if you will.
Right.
And Sienna, like you said, definitely came into her own. You could tell that she is the very being who is going to stop or at least challenge Art from continuing to grow. And Lauren herself, I feel like, definitely blossomed in this film. I do feel like the lack of confidence, or I guess like, and I wouldn't even put it that way. A better way to phrase it would be that the way that Lauren portrayed Sienna in the second movie, I feel like definitely fits Sienna's role in that second film, which is a very like not so self-confident internally, but externally tries to portray a type of character who is kind of an outsider, but an insider as well. Is selfless, but can be very selfish when push comes to shove. And very much hung up on other people's opinions while she pretends that she's not. That version of Sienna does very, very well in 2, because by the end of 2, Sienna really comes to her own, and that's when she discovers her powers and so on and so forth. In the third film,
she's like almost the opposite. I think I know where you're going with this. She's like internally confident. She's the badass bitch that killed this motherfucker. But yeah, she doesn't show it. She's almost like timid and portrays like I think she even mentions in the film she can't say certain things or act certain things because they're not going to believe me anyways.
Yeah.
So
she understands her place. She understands like where she is. She understands like she's not well mentally in a lot of different ways. Like very early on in the film, you see like the PTSD portrayals, like the having the delusions, the almost like schizophrenic like tendencies that she has and is going through because of the trauma that she had to endure with Art. She does a very, very good job of doing that. Like, she's never unsure of herself, no matter how many times people are looking at her, questioning her, where even her own brother, Jonathan, seems to, like, be gaslighting her in a way where he's just constantly saying, like, we just need to move on. We just need to move on. There's no point in living in the past. Yeah. Very similar to how Jenna Ortega's character in Scream 6 does it.
Yeah.
Where, like, she's constantly telling her sister, you're living in the past. What are you going to do in 5 years? Yeah. And this movie literally shows a 5-year jump between, like, what happened in 2 and what happened in 3.
I like that, and this is one of my likes about this film, and I think that's the one thing people don't praise the Terrifier films for a lot, is that they're very tightly written.
Yes.
And it's obvious because it's the same director for all of them. It's the same guy who created it. I like the idea that they incorporated Jonathan's older personality in the form of letters.
Yes.
That was written to Sienna, and how I guess he's changed over the last few years, but when this initially happened, he was still very much that Jonathan that we saw in movie 2 was still there.
Yes.
The one who was, fantasizing about Art the Clown, the one who was a fan of just horror, the one who, I think she even mentioned that he was looking into demonology, trying to go look for that girl. Like, just certain things that the Jonathan from 2 would have done, and it was addressed in this movie. I actually like that a lot.
Yeah, they definitely connected the dots. Like, I'm sure David Leone had to figure out a way to explain how the actor for Jonathan shot up like a fucking bean sprout within a few years of, like, 2 coming out versus 3. Because he was already tall in 2, but in 3, like, he looks, and I mean this with no disrespect, he's a tree, dude. Like, he's tall, and more props to him. But you couldn't tell that there's, like, tension between the two of them. Like, Sienna wants to connect, wants to be able to talk to Jonathan, but Jonathan's the one that's pushing her away. Like, the way that her cousins and her aunt and uncle talk about how Jonathan is usually at the house around this time of year and he's not there because Sienna's there. Like, this is the first Christmas they're spending together in a few years. Sienna's constantly been in and out of psychiatric. Like, the fact that Sienna's character understands and, like, even tells Gabby, her younger cousin, about her mental instabilities and things along those lines.
We'll get into that in a second, too.
I definitely feel like Lauren did a very good job of portraying all the different facets of somebody who is recovering and is also, like, very aware of the situation that they're in.
So you mentioned her. We had a new introduction to the cast.
Yes.
We actually had quite a few, but I want to focus on her because we're probably going to see this character again.
Yes.
This was Gabby Shaw, the younger cousin, I believe, to Sienna, and she was portrayed by the young Annatella Rose. Mm-hmm. So, what did you think of Gabby in this film? Almost kind of took the Jonathan role, if you will.
Definitely. I mean, Sienna kind of mentioned it at the beginning of the film whenever she's interacting with her uncle, which is, where's my partner in crime? Where's my little partner in crime?
Yeah.
And when you're seeing the flashbacks play out throughout Terrifier 3, Gabby and Sienna look very similar at a young age, which I think was purposely done.
Yes. At one point, I almost thought it was Gabby for a split second.
Yeah. Until you saw her, like, talk up to her father.
Dad. Yeah.
So I did like her. In the beginning, I was not necessarily confused, but more so trying to figure out the role that she would play. But because Jonathan was so distant with Sienna, I feel like that's how Sienna was coping with everything going on around her, and all the triggers she had is by having Gabby nearby. Like, whatever void that there was with Jonathan's lack of interaction was being filled with Gabby.
Yeah.
The only thing is, Sienna was getting triggered really easily, and I guess one could argue it's because of the fact that Art was so close. Like, it seemed like as if she would see those hallucinations and those delusions, like, and would have certain quote-unquote delusions, regardless of Art being close, but they were happening on a more frequent basis because he was physically near her and like had woken up again. But what do you think about her?
I liked her a lot, and I was like you too. For the first half of the movie, I was trying to, like, well, not the first half, but at least like the first, like, quarter, I was like wondering, what is this character's role gonna be? Yeah. Is she replacing Jonathan?
Yeah,
might be. Ended up doing that. Is she just gonna be another character that, like, is she gonna be the kid that we actually get to see that gets killed on screen?
Yeah.
Like, I was thinking of, like, what the possibility of Gabby's gonna be, but the clues laid it out that she was gonna be important.
Yes.
And judging by the end of this film, she's definitely gonna be important.
Yeah. Whether
that's in Terrifier 4 or possibly 5.
Yeah.
I'll actually give my thoughts on that later, a little prediction of what Terrifier 4 could be. Mm-hmm. But I ultimately liked her introduction. It is just kind of sad though, man. I feel like Jonathan kind of got the shaft, but I don't know if that was maybe on his end, the actor for Jonathan Elliott. Like, I don't know if maybe he wanted to pursue another franchise. I don't know if he
was recording something else,
like doing something else, or maybe he doesn't want to really be in acting that much. I haven't looked into him. I haven't watched interviews of Elliott, so I don't know what his mindset is on these films.
Yeah.
Or if it strictly was just a creative choice to have Gabby be the new, I guess, partner in crime to Sienna. I don't know, but
especially for feeding into the fact that Jonathan is really trying to move on in every sense of the word.
Like if they're really standing on that, they're standing on business that they want this character to have moved on, and that was what fucked him over. That's why he couldn't, win this time or get out of that situation. Okay, I'll buy that, but it's still though, like. It would have been cool to at least seen his death. Yeah. But and at least see how he would have reacted to seeing them again.
Yeah.
Because I think he's the first person to see them in movie too, right? The little girl and Art in the school.
Yeah, definitely. He is the first, but this is also when he was like really intrigued and looking out for it.
Yeah, exactly. So there you go. Speaking of the little girl, I can't remember whose TikTok this was, but I do know Room for Scream is the one who reposted it. And I believe he explained that, and he mentioned that the reason why we don't see that little girl is because in Terrifier 2, if you look at her eyes, they constantly glow like a demon.
Yeah.
And in this movie, Vicky's eyes are now glowing like a demon.
Yeah, they glow at the end of 2.
Yes. So we have to assume that whatever entity or demon, we know it's a demon now, but whatever entity and demon in Terrifier 2 was inhabiting this body of this ghost-like girl or whatever is now inside of Vicky.
Yeah.
And that's basically where the little girl is. She's still in the film, it's just not in the form of the little girl anymore. So.
She was Art's vessel for movie 2. Movie 3 is Vicky or Victoria.
Yeah.
And I didn't really question it. Not necessarily to say like, oh, the girl was forgettable, but little kids in horror films just are very off-putting to me. And I know for a fact that a lot of like horror movie directors do deliberately pick out little kids as like a being that can hold a malicious entity because of the fact of people like me exist. So I was okay with it, but it also made sense as to where that whole headcanon of like whatever entity is possessing her moves on from body to body. We just don't know for how long it needs to be within that body. Because the eyes almost, and I'm sorry to cut you off, but like the eyes of the little girl got transferred to Vicky whenever Art was like birthed from her. So only Lord knows about how she was tied to Art from movie 1 to movie 2.
I guess it also is like a situational thing as well, because when you look at movie 2, Art's kind of just having fun, going around, tormenting people, taking time with his kills, like you said. And this little girl is like accompanying him, and they're doing things, and just she's around him, helping lure victims in, like with the
voices, just like what Vicky is doing in 3.
I think the difference though is since Sienna was able to defeat Art and chop off his head, I think that this demon now needed to not embody a little ghost girl. Because it is a girl who I guess was killed by Art or just was killed years ago. Yeah. She now has to embody an actual living human being. And what better than to go after somebody who Art has already encountered, who probably has a strong, what's that line? Like a tether to Art. And then can also help Art if he were to encounter Sienna again. Now it'll be a real life, somebody who can fight back. So
almost like the entity is maturing along with the body that it inhabits.
So I think that made a lot of sense too, and we got to see it too, because even though Art was kind of like the final villain there for Sienna, which he is, let's be real, that demon was kind of holding a little grudge there with Sienna. That there was a little bar that she dropped of like, and I'll quote her, like, "Come on, bitch, let's see how strong you are. Like try that shit with me." Remember, like, you know what I mean? So it's like, it almost seemed like that demon was like that. It inhabited Vicky for the chance to be there when Art encounters, Sienna again. So.
And I think I kind of have a hybrid of that, or I guess a slight tangent of that theory that you have. I feel like Art speaks through his vessels And the little girl couldn't really talk, so with that, except whenever she was impersonating somebody's voice over the phone.
Yeah.
But Vicky seemed to vocalize a lot of Art's thoughts prior to being fully possessed, and then come to the final showdown, the final scene where everything's happening in the living room of the uncle and aunt's house. The demon is very vocal through Vicky to Sienna. Because anytime Vicky is saying, oh yeah, come on, let's see your strength, like, you can see Art in the back almost like snarling at Sienna. So I feel like she, like, with the evolution of the vessel of Art, you also got to see the type of words that were exchanged between the two of them. Because Vicky, or I guess the entity, even at one point says, like, oh, I would love to see you try and kill me. Like, you wanted to open up the present, right? Like, let's see you open up the presents, after Art had, like, smashed her hands completely.
Yeah.
So, or how, like, the demon was even going around calling Sienna's aunt mom, and her uncle like dad, as if pretending to be Gabby, you know? Like, there was a lot of malicious intent behind there, and it sounded a lot like a lot of things that Art would do, because, I mean, rewinding all the way back to Terrifier 1, he acts like a kid for the homeless lady before he completely lashes out. He like wants to go trick-or-treating just like the other kids before he unleashes in the bedroom scene, right? And like even in movie 3, he fangirls over the guy who's dressed up as Santa before he finally lashes out. Like, you finally get to know exactly what's going through his head before he lashes out, and he seems to harbor a lot of hatred towards Sienna, which is very evident during the last like final showdown, if you will. So what better way to be able to vocalize it than having a vessel who can say the words and like say it with the amount of spite and the amount of hatred that he carries for her.
Now that we're back on Art, before we wrap this up and give like our final thoughts on it, I wanted to see, what is your I guess reception to the lore that we got with Sienna and Art. It almost, and I saw a TikTok one time pointing this out, it almost seems like it's not, I don't want to say biblical or like religious way, but they're definitely going down like the lore of like demonic possession and things like that. And like, what is your idea of that? Like, did you think this is where Terrifier was gonna go with Art? Did you like what are your thoughts essentially? Because I don't really know how to vocalize my thoughts. So I want to hear what you have to say about all that.
I feel like, and the way that it's being implied, is that Sienna's father had a lot to do with the birthing of Art and how Sienna is like today.
Okay.
What I mean by that is, even in the second film, you see Jonathan holding on to a sketchbook of his father's, who shows him drawing different monsters, and it finally settles down on a clown, and that clown gets refined to how Art looks like. And we see a glimpse of this in movie 3, where he had promised Sienna countless of times that he would finally make a female protagonist, and it would be a strong female protagonist. And when he's finally delivering on the promise and giving the hand-painted picture over to Sienna, now I don't know if this is like a delusion or something that really happened, because I won't say we're constantly questioning Sienna's reality versus dream, but at the same time, it's heavily implied that she knows the difference, but there are times where it's fight or flight mode and she can't really tell, especially in the very beginning of certain situations playing out. But if it is a real memory, and it's a memory that she fully unlocked because of the encounters with Art, when her father is handing the custom character over to Sienna for the first time for her to name the guardian, if you will, he seems to almost have visions while holding on to the paper, and is shaking because Sienna's holding on to it on the other side. And images of like Sienna's battle with Art, her in the armor, her in the costume, her in the tank, like everything along those lines is flashing before his eyes. And then he finally lets go, and Sienna is holding on to the painting with like for dear life with both hands, and he just says, "I'm sorry," and that's it. And we come to find out that Sienna's father had been starting to quote unquote spiral and seemed to have a very like dreary outlook on life before he passed because of Art. And I think Jonathan even had the headcanon in the second film that his father had some sort of like effect on Art the Clown overall. Be it like through his existence, or maybe he like saw Art, had an encounter with Art at one point before he became the renowned serial killer that he is. But I feel like the father plays a really big role in this. And we got to see more of it in this film.
Yeah. I can see it probably going in a way to where that demon's probably going to come back and we're going to get like a bigger finale, if you will. That'll probably involve like Gabby, the dad, maybe like an illusion of the dad, or like some sort of, like, is the dad coming from heaven or something like that. Like, I can see something like that happening.
Yeah.
And it'll be
Sienna having a vision of some sort.
Yeah, so it'll be like some grandiose like finale. And I actually want to bring up a prediction for Terrifier 4 since we're at this point. I was telling you when we're walking out of the theaters, if I was a betting man, if I was David Leone, what I would probably do is I would have Terrifier 4, just be not like a standalone film, but a film that just takes place with another story in a different city.
Yeah.
Like where you have Art at the very end of the film, he now ends up in a new city, and you kind of have him terrify that city town and go after the people there. And whether or not you want to create a protagonist that is a part of that grand finale in 5, that's up to you. Or you could just have it end to where the demon comes back and you see the cliffhanger is like someone's eyes opening and it's glowing yellow. Like whatever you want to do, there's different ways to go about it. But I would do that. That way you can kind of give yourself a room to breathe, focus on how you're going to connect to this finale. Because the way this movie ends, you and I both made the joke, Sienna's most likely going back to a mental institution. I don't know how you, unless she runs away and goes on the run for X amount of time, I don't know how she can explain that without getting locked up in a fucking jacket. You know what I mean? Like there's so many dead bodies.
A lot of dead bodies. People would have, like, it would take a lot of processing before they realize that her fingerprints are not on the scene, aside from like her trying to defend herself. Because like I was betting on the fact that Gabby would not get sucked into that hole, and that she would be there, and that it would be an easy like testify for Sienna for her to like not get locked up in any way, shape, or form.
Right? Yeah.
Exactly. But Gabby's not there. And my other question to you is, and this is a big detail that I feel like you and I didn't discuss, is that Gabby fell through that hole with the sacred sword.
Yeah.
The only tool that could help Sienna fight off Art. So I'm pretty sure if we're not going to get that tangent of a story of Art going around and terrifying another town, we're probably going to, if I were to bet on the plot, it would be a mix of what you're saying right now, plus a side-by-side of what's going on with Sienna, which is we're seeing Art still going around and killing the way that he is, but Sienna is locked up. And it kind of takes like a route with Hatchet where the prime suspect is locked up, but the kills are still happening. However, authorities aren't going to be as dumb as they are in Hatchet 3. Like, let's be fucking real.
Yeah.
And we're seeing Sienna put the pieces together on how to get there, but Gabby needed to fall with the sword in order to protect herself from hell or whatever space that she's in right now, in limbo or what have you. But that's going to be the only tool that allows for Sienna to travel, because that door only opened due to the demon's will. And the demon wanted to get rid of Gabby real quick.
Yeah.
Plus, like, I'm pretty sure after Sienna sliced Vicky's head, the blood turned to acid, which then caused a doorway to open. So if anything, I'm pretty sure Sienna's going to have to figure out a way to decapitate the next vessel that Art uses in order to open up that doorway again, which would lead to Terrifier 5, or even lead to Gabby and Sienna coming into contact. But Art is still racking up the bodies, which, if you kind of want to play on the headcanon that I have, is that similar to Michael, the more bodies he collects, the more powerful he becomes.
Yeah.
Which I guess could also play into the headcanon of Freddy, which is the more fear he festers from people, the more powerful he becomes as well. It's almost like a duo of the two.
Yeah, exactly. But overall, I feel like as of this first watch, and I'll rewatch this. And
I will.
Yeah. As of this first watch, I probably am going to still say Terrifier 2 is better than 3. But this film definitely racked up the kills, a bigger body count.
Yes.
I think Lauren just portrayed Sienna way better.
Yeah.
Way more comfortable in the role. Mm-hmm. And I think Art was just the tenacity of art was crazy in this movie versus the more long drawn out, like just him having fun. In this one, he's ready to go.
Constantly, yeah. From scene to scene, from kill to kill. Like, fuck, dude. He killed like 6 kids in the mall because he was pretending to be Santa. Like, who could go around and say that? And I'm pretty sure he killed the little girl in the opening scene. We just didn't see it. That's another kill that happened off screen.
So if I were to say like Terrifier 2 is like an 8.5 out of 10 for me, then I would probably say Terrifier 3 is like a 7.5 out of 10.
I would say 8, 7.5. Yeah. Like depending on the day. I definitely need to watch it again to have a more solid rating, but first impressions, I would say it's pretty up there. Yeah. I would give Terrifier 2 a slight edge, but not as big of an edge as yours. So more likely than not 8 for me.
I got you. Yeah. But let us know what y'all think about Terrifier 3 and just where we're at in this franchise now after watching Terrifier. Like, who would have thought this random movie I came across on Netflix years ago with my sister that it would be where it's at. Like,
nope, I'm pretty sure they
records,
didn't.
Nobody
did.
Yeah,
nobody did.
This fan-funded film, bro, that almost didn't happen.
Like a whole dream come true for everybody.
Which, by the way, for the people who were on Twitter actually saying that Art the Clown
is an industry plant.
Shut the fuck up. That makes no sense. He's a fictional character. And even if you wanted to say, oh, a fictional character can be an industry plant, bro, nobody wanted him. He's a fan-funded film. This film almost didn't happen.
Yeah.
That is literally the opposite of an industry plant.
A lot of people negated his existence for a while.
So, I don't know where that came from. And if you're saying that, just shut the fuck up. Anyways, if y'all want to check out the rest.
Strong note. We're ending on a strong note, guys. Aside from that tangent.
So, we're releasing this on Halloween, obviously. But if you want to hear more about just our Halloween special, go check out all of our Halloween reviews of each of the timelines. And we had a lot of fun doing that.
Yes.
And we'll be back again next week with probably not Hatchet. We're probably going to take a break from a movie and do maybe some Reddit horror stories.
Reddit horror stories, or hell, if anything, I know Halloween is this week. By the way, happy early Halloween.
Exactly.
We could even go over the history of Halloween altogether since the...
Yeah, we could do that, yeah.
Since the holiday has passed. And
that actually sounds more fun, yeah.
Yeah. And then maybe, jump into Reddit stories. But I don't know. You guys let us know. Which one would you prefer? More haunted Reddit stories or really getting to know the history of Halloween altogether from like Sam Hain to today?
We can do half and half maybe.
Yeah.
Anyways, thank you guys for tuning in as always. We're Slashers to Sink and we'll catch y'all guys next time.
See ya.